Willkommen auf der Insel Gabriola. Ich heiße Iain Lawrence und ich habe das Buch Winterpony geschrieben. I studied German in high school, but that was a long time ago and I've forgotten most of what I've learned. I've been twice to Germany and I was looking forward very much to seeing the city that in Canada we call Cologne. I'm sorry that I have to send this video instead and that I have to talk to you in English. I'm going to tell you a bit about the story of the Winter Pony and how it came to be written, but first I want to show you where I live and where I work. I'm standing now at Descanso Bay where the ferry comes in from Nanaimo. That's our big city with a population of 100,000. Our high school is there, our hospital and our shopping malls. The ferry shuttles back and forth all day, and when it makes its last trip and ties up for the night, we're pretty well cut off from the rest of the world until the next morning. That makes the island feel safe, like a castle behind a drawbridge. About 4,000 people live here. You can't go anywhere without running into people you know, and a trip to the village can take a long time with all the visiting that you have to do. That's the heart of the island, and it's just up that hill behind you.
We have one post office, one gas station, one school, and one grocery store. But wherever you go, there's an artist stand or a studio. There are more artists here per capita than almost anywhere else in Canada, and tourists come over just to tour their galleries. Others come to see the natural beauty. They head for Malaspina Galleries, where the sandstone has eroded into an enormous frozen wave. It's named after the Spanish explorer who anchored here in the 1700s. The tourists go on to the Magic Mile, a seaside drive that takes them to the very tip of the island, one of my own favorite places. From there you can gaze out to the lighthouse at Entrance Island or just sit and watch the sun go down. If you go in the other direction, south from the village, you pass an old restaurant that some people say is haunted. Then you go through the forest on a road called the Tunnel, where the trees meet high above you. There are trails through the forest leading into the woods, where you can find the homes of all sorts of creatures. Like everyone else on the island, this little elf doesn't bother to lock his door. From the end of the tunnel, you pass through farmland until you reach the bottom of the island at Silva Bay, 11 kilometers from the village. There are 3 marinas here, and a shipyard that is sadly closing after 80 years of operation. I landed at Silva Bay in a wooden sailboat when I moved to Gabriola Island. I still have a boat at Pages Marina, but it's a bit smaller now. I kept a dinghy so I could get out on the water, because the nicest thing you can do when you live on a little island is to go to an even smaller island. The road loops around to the north end of the island where I live. My house was once the newspaper office. Before I started writing fiction, I was the editor of a daily paper, so I feel at home here. Off to the side is this little green shed that belongs to Growls, the Gabriola Rescue of Wildlife Society. It's like a trapper's cabin full of nets and cages. I'm one of the volunteers. There are deer everywhere, so many that some people see them as a pest. There are otters and owls, sea lions, killer whales, Canada geese, and the funny little oyster catcher with its bright red beak. There are wild turkeys that roam around the island in little gangs. Their descendants were released years ago by a farmer, and now they like to block the roads wherever they go. There's one lonely elk that swam across the channel and now spends its days hanging around with the cattle on the island's only ranch. There's even a Sasquatch, but you have to be quick to see him, and he's only made of plywood. I like to rescue the seal pups that find themselves abandoned on beaches around the island, and the eagles that get into trouble for one reason or another. They all go up to different rehab places, and it's always a happy day when they come back to the island. We once released 12 sea pups at once, and quite a crowd of people came out to watch. One little seal pup didn't want to leave. The ocean must have seemed huge, but this eagle could hardly wait to get away. Now let's go inside the house. It stands at the edge of a cliff, looking south toward Nanaimo. In the spring and summer, turkey vultures surf back and forth on a wave of wind that rises from the cliff. But the houses below me are built among enormous boulders that came loose long ago, a reminder that we're overdue for a very big earthquake. I work at the back of the house, looking over the treetops. My desk is always piled with papers and books, a habit that I began as a reporter. I don't like it, but I can't stop it. Two computers, one for writing and the other for everything else. I play classical music, the same thing all day long, usually either Gustav Holst's The Planets or Vivaldi's Four Seasons. I don't really hear the music while it's playing, or even realize when it's stopped, but turning it on puts my mind into a creative mood. I didn't write The Winter Pony sitting here, but the process was exactly the same in the house before this one and the house before that one. I play a game of solitaire, turn on the music, and start to write. I was born in the forest, at the foot of the mountains, in a meadow I knew as the grassy place. The first thing I saw was the sun shining red through the trees, and 7 shaggy animals grazing on their shadows. They were ponies, and I was a pony, my legs as weak as saplings. My mother had to nudge me to my feet the first time she fed me, but within a day our little band was on the move. I skipped along at my mother's side, thinking I was already as fast and strong as any other pony, not knowing that the others had slowed to keep me near. Our leader was a silvery stallion, as wary as an owl. We never crossed an open slope without him going first, standing dead still at the edge while he watched for wolves and mountain lions. He was always last to drink and last to graze, keeping guard until we'd finished. Except for one dark patch on his chest, his whole body was the color of snow. I loved to see him in the wind and the sun, with his white mane blown into shimmering streamers. We had a route that took a year to travel, from the snow-filled valleys of winter to summer's high meadows. It brought us back every spring to a stony creek that we crossed single file. Our hooves made a lovely chuckling sound on the rocks as the water gurgled round our ankles. We climbed the bank on the other side, passed through a fringe of forest, and came to the grassy place, which I imagined to be the center of the world. The narrator is James Pigg, a real pony who went along on Captain Scott's journey to the South Pole. Very early in the story, he is captured by men and put to work hauling logs. He's treated very badly, but he finds solace from a life of cruelty by imagining something better in the future. These things I'd learned when I was young. Life is short and men are cruel, and ponies are born to suffer. I decided that I would work as hard as I could at whatever job I was given, believing that I would earn my reward in the end and live forever in the pony's place. In the pony's place, men would serve the animals. In the pony's place, the stables would be warm, well padded with straw, and the blankets would come straight from the stove, still hot and soft and smoky smelling. My scars would heal at the pony's place, and not once in 10,000 years would I feel the sting of whip or lash. Nobody knows how James Pigg ended up at a horse sale in Siberia. But from that point, where an Englishman comes along looking for white ponies to buy for Captain Scott's expedition, everything that happens is true. Each little episode was recorded either by Scott himself or by one of the men who went along with him. I was given a stall in a row of 4 with a roof of canvas cloth. The first thing I did was lie down and roll on my back. My legs felt happy because it was the first time in 40 days that they didn't have to hold me. At the end of every march, Patrick built a wall for me. It was wonderful. I loved to stand behind my wall and watch the wind whip whirls of snow from the top of it. At last I could sleep. It was only darkness. All day long it was night. The air in our stable got colder and colder, and frost sometimes pushed right through the wall. By midwinter, the men who sat around the blubber stove hardly talked any more. They had nothing left to say, and a friendly sort of silence hung over them. Patrick held onto my rope, and together we took our first step to the pole. It was very exciting. Never before in my life had I been a leader. I learned the story of Captain Scott from my father. He was born just 10 years after the expedition, and Scott was always his hero. But I had never read the story for myself until I found this book for sale in a library. Inside was a picture of James Pigg, all covered with snow, standing with Patrick Cohen, the Irish sailor who walked every step beside him. A caption below the picture said, "Cohen with James Pigg, the one survivor of the 3 ponies that made the Depot Lane journey under Lieutenant Evans and which became the pet of the expedition. It later made the 500-mile journey south." I took that to mean that James Pigg had walked all the way to the South Pole, and I thought it would be a fun little story to let the pony tell his tale. If I had known how it really turned out, I might have abandoned the idea right then. But once I'd read the book, once I'd done the research and learned the truth about James Pigg, I didn't want to give up the story. I thought he deserved to have it told. When I write, I speak the words aloud. If a story is going well, I hear the voices of the characters, and my own voice changes to match them when I write the dialogue. Right from the start, James Pigg had a childish voice, like a teddy bear's, and I heard it more clearly and strongly than I'd ever heard the voice of any human character. He had a simple, earnest way of talking, and everything in his world was alive. The water, the snow, the sun, and the moon all lived and died in the pony's mind. I had not had much experience with horses, but I knew dogs very well, and mine was gentle, loyal, and brave, just as James Pigg had been described. So I gave the pony the mind of a dog, with a dog's desire to please and a clever way of sharing thoughts with a person. When everything was combined, the result was a little creature who seemed utterly real to me. I knew the story was heartbreakingly sad because it made me cry when I wrote it. Afterward, it made me cry for days. I don't mind if the story makes you feel sad. It was meant to do that. But I hope it doesn't make you angry at Captain Scott and the other man. They may have made mistakes, but they were tremendously courageous, and they are still heroes to me. If you've read the book, I hope you feel the same. Thank you for watching my video. Auf Wiedersehen.
Oh, there, you're a good lad, James Pigg.